a nutshell, title insurance is we basically are ensuring that when the buyer buys this property, they're going to actually own the property. There's going to be no ownership issues. They're going to not inherit any debts, most commonly like open mortgages, tax liens, taxes, etc. And then you're going to be purchasing what is called an owner's policy, and that protects you in the future if you have any claims.
Until you die?
Until you die.
Okay.
Until you die.
There's no time limit.
It basically protects you, I should rephrase that, until you die or until you sell the property. Yes. And in many cases it does transfer within
that's
family.
Important. Like someone, so someone can challenge that you own that house. With title insurance, you have someone backing you and saying, no, you own this house. No one's going to take it away from you.
That's right. And I'll give you some horror story examples in a little bit. Another thing that we've evolved to take care of these days is a couple years ago, all the standard documents changed. And there's a lot of lenders became much stricter. And so attorneys started to say, hey, these documents are crazy, and we don't really want to deal with them because we didn't study law to do math and calculate stuff. So a lot of the closing process has been transferred to the title companies. So I guess the term that is used is settlement agent, and that probably happens 90+% of our deals. Now the attorney does not want to handle that. So what does that mean? We're the ones who reach out to you, reach out to the other side to get everyone's numbers. And we prepare this form called a CD, closing disclosure, previously known as a HUD. And it's basically a list of everyone's figures and costs. We also calculate taxes, any other like water bills, etc., to the point of closing. So when the property is transferred, there's no debts that are carried over. Everything is calculated. We also collect all the money and we're the ones responsible for dispersing the money to all the right parties. So as you can see, there's a lot of liability there. If we were to transfer the money to the wrong party, the money's gone, that's on us. So if you don't have to take that responsibility as an attorney, it's best not to. It also lowers your insurance. So it is not required by law to have title insurance, but any institutional lender will require a lender's policy. And the reason is because they want to protect themselves. They want to protect the house and their interest in the house, which is their mortgage, right? So if you bought this house, the buyer bought this house, and then someone else came and was like, hey, this house is not yours, it's mine, they would lose their mortgage and their investment, which would be devastating for them. So that's why they require title insurance. There's two different title policies. There's the owner's policy and the lender's policy. Owner only protects the owner. Lender only protects the lender. But there's a very good reason to get them both at the same time, which is why everyone does it, and that is because the way the fees work out, it makes no sense really. It's very, very little additional cost to also insure yourself if we're also insuring the lender. First of all, it should be a big red flag and a cue to you if the lender who is doing this for a living requires it on every transaction. But basically, it protects you against all those things I listed. And I'll give a few examples. So I'll make sure I didn't miss anything. So one stat that I came across that is pretty telling is that according to the American Land Title Association, 1 in every 4 transactions has title issues. That's a huge number. 25%. That's 25%. And those issues can range from something as little as someone owing taxes, and you buying it and not knowing, and so those debts become yours, to could be a whole other mortgage that seller just didn't tell you about, but now that you own the property, that mortgage is yours now, to something much more serious, such as a nasty divorce, and one spouse decides, hey, I'm just going to sell this house and keep all the money and run away. And if you didn't have title insurance, you didn't do a title search, you wouldn't know for sure if this person that's selling you the house actually has the right to do so. Right. And if you did that, this other spouse could come out later and say, hey, I own half this house, so I want my money now. So then you would be out of luck. So those do happen, or like a hidden heir. Someone died and had a will, and there's a bunch of people that now own the house, and a couple of the people decide, hey, I'm going to try to sell this house and keep the money for myself, and not tell my other siblings. So I'm just going to tell a few stories that we've come across of situations where we were able to help, and one, unfortunately, where we weren't able to because it was too late. So one example is the previous owner had some IRS bills, and usually in a lot of situations things get discharged if there's in certain situations a death and a foreclosure, but everything all the right paperwork has to be filed, everything has to be served correctly. So this one, they forgot to serve the United States of America. So the new buyer now inherits these IRS liens. Another one is one that happens way too often, and that is a lot of people get really excited because they watch some show about flipping houses. They go to these sheriff sales and they buy these properties. We had one lady who bought a property at a sheriff sale and afterwards said, "Hey, Victor, can you do some research? I bought this property and I want to get insurance now." There's a whole other mortgage that she didn't realize was there, and that was for $75,000. So that could be all your profits, maybe even more. Another person, another example
that
is...
lady was responsible for that 75,000.
That's right. That's right.
So,
So,
hold on a second.
okay.
So she paid whatever price at the sheriff's sale that they sold the house to, but then she had to pay another 75,000 on top of that to have it cleared.
Correct.
And she couldn't negotiate that 75,000 with the bank, or reduce it, or drop it down to 30,000.
We're now getting into intermediate level title, which we can go talk about this later. But basically, if she had negotiated before the sheriff's sale, she would be able to negotiate it like a short sale. But because the foreclosure action already happened, this new loan now has seniority, and they can just foreclose on the house and get their whole debt back. So why would they negotiate with her?
Exactly. Yeah. So you position you give them more power.
That's right.
Yeah.
Another one is a situation where someone lost their house, and then that person passed away, and the property was sold at auction. But the original person that lost their house, I guess the child of the person who originally lost their house said, "Hey, my family was never properly served, and we're losing this house." And we look in the records. This is after the fact, and it's true. The property was served. They served it to the person's house, but they have legal documentation that shows that person was in a mental facility that whole time through the rest of their life. So obviously they were not there at the time to get served. So now this investor who didn't have title insurance will lose that property to this heir. And last one is something that we see more and more often, and it has to do with fraud. Because in actuality, what is a deed? It's a piece of paper that people can sign, use ink and put something on there, put a stamp, and then it's a deed. But there's one example where this person bought a property. After they bought this nice property, they got an overseas job offer. So they said, "Okay, I'm leaving this nice house." Found some guy to keep the lawn looking good so they wouldn't get fines from the city, and then went overseas. And a year passed by. The only interaction they had with the house was that they would pay this person to maintain the property, and they'd pay their property tax. After a while, the city stopped allowing him to pay the property taxes, and they said it's because it's already been paid. And he's like, "Oh, that's strange. Why is property tax paid?" And he found out it's because that person who's watching the house sold that property to someone else, because he just forged a deed into his own name and then sold it. So the new buyer, unbeknownst to him, obviously he bought this with good faith, but he didn't protect himself. So now he doesn't have, he's going to lose that house to that person who's overseas. So these are the reasons. These are obviously nightmare situations, but they do happen. But more commonly, they are, fixing small issues, tackling like debts and etc. Okay, so now that I've scared you, I guess one difference between title insurance that I should mention, why it's very different from something, say, like auto insurance or homeowner's insurance, is that we can actively control the risk of that situation, that transaction. And what do I mean by that? If you buy auto insurance, your insurer can't come to you and say, "Hey, let me make your driving safer. Let me teach you how to be better. Let me give you a different car so there's less chance you'll get into an accident." They can't do that. For us, if we do our due diligence correctly and we find all these issues, and fix them before closing, then there's much less chance it'll turn into a claim. So that's why it's important to work with a company that knows what they're doing. Otherwise, even if you pay for title insurance, great, but if there's a claim at the end, you still have to go through that headache, even though it's covered.